Welcome, the Lord's chosen. Congratulations. You've officially become a walking documentary, and half the people watching you don't even clap, they just squint. You made it. Maybe you're not at your final form yet, but you crossed a line most people never reach. Visible, undeniable progress. Studies have shown that when someone in a group breaks through to a higher level of success, the people around them often react with a mix of admiration, confusion, and low-key resentment. They don't just see you, they start to monitor you, your moves, your habits, your mistakes, your wins. You stopped being one of us trying and quietly became one of them who did it. And that's where things get interesting. Because right now, whether you notice it or not, you're under observation. Former classmates lurking on your stories, old co-workers replaying your journey like, wait, how did they suddenly get there? Relatives pretending not to care but secretly asking around about you. Even people who never supported you are now studying you like a rare species. How did you survive what should have broken you? They might not like you, but they definitely take notes. You didn't just upgrade your lifestyle, you accidentally upgraded into a case study. The same people who once dismissed your dreams as unrealistic are now zooming in on your life like analysts, trying to figure out what they missed. They'll call you lucky, chosen, favored, everything except what you actually are. Someone who decided not to stay where life dropped you. That's what's unsettling about you. It's not the car, the house, the peace, or the glow-up. It's the undeniable proof that staying stuck was never the only option. And let's be honest, your journey isn't aesthetic. It wasn't all vision boards and motivational playlists. There were nights where you doubted yourself so hard you almost packed it in. Days where you moved on nothing but stubborn faith and caffeine. Seasons where all you had was a tiny, annoying belief that you were meant for more. And yet, here you are. You turned your private battles into public results. And now people are treating your life like a research project. In this video, we're going deep into what happens when you actually make it. Not the fairy tale version, but the raw, uncomfortable reality of being watched, misunderstood, copied, doubted, admired, and quietly resented, all at the same time. We're going to unpack why they're studying you, what your success is really triggering in them, and why your evolution feels like a plot twist they never saw coming. So settle in, because this isn't just motivation. This is a breakdown of why, as the chosen one who finally crossed that invisible line, you're no longer just living your life. You're being analyzed, measured, and talked about. And whether they admit it or not, your story has become the proof they can't unsee. Number one, you didn't get lucky. You became a living case study in cause and effect. People throw the word lucky at you because it's easier than admitting the truth. Your life is showing receipts. For years, you were doing things that looked pointless to everyone else. Staying in when others went out, studying when no exam was near, practicing your craft when nobody was watching, saying no to drama, distractions, and short-term thrills. At the time, it didn't look impressive. It looked unnecessary. But life has a way of exposing what's real. Now those unnecessary choices are paying off, and people can't ignore it. You're not just talking about discipline, consistency, or faith. You have visible results. You turned ideas into income, pain into power, chaos into clarity. You didn't just speak about change. Your life became the proof that change is possible. That's why people are studying you. You stopped being a theory and became evidence. The uncomfortable part is this. Your existence challenges their story. It's no longer just some people are lucky, some are not. Because they watched you when you were struggling. They saw you when nothing was working. They remember when you were broke, confused, or heartbroken. So now that things are shifting for you, they can't pretend you woke up one morning and the universe just hand-delivered success to your doorstep. Deep down, they know your results are connected to your habits. The late nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices, the self-control, the healing, the isolation, the boring routines, all of it is showing up in your life. And that realization stings, because if your life is a result of choices, then so is theirs. That's why they zoom in on your every move, not just out of curiosity, but as a way to find cracks in your story so they can feel better about their own. Calling it luck makes them comfortable. Calling it cause and effect makes them responsible. And that's the real reason you're being watched. Your life no longer fits their excuses. It exposes them. Number 2, you glow up exposed how many people were only comfortable with your struggle. Some people were perfectly fine with you as long as you were still trying. They liked you better when you were tired, unsure, a little broken, and always talking about what you hoped to become. You were safe that way. You were relatable. You were predictable. The moment your life started changing for real, the atmosphere around you changed too. Suddenly, the same people who once said, "I'm so happy for you," started sounding different. The compliments came with a sting. The jokes became backhanded. The energy in the room shifted from, "We're rooting for you," to, "Who do you think you are now?" They'll never say it out loud, but your progress crossed an invisible line they never admitted existed. You were supposed to stay at a level that made them feel comfortable, not surpass it. Your glow-up exposed something uncomfortable. A lot of people were attached to your struggle, not your success. They liked being the one you ran to for advice, help, or emotional support. They liked feeling slightly ahead, slightly more stable, slightly more together than you. Then, slowly, things flipped. You healed more, you earned more, you matured more, you started making moves they never expected you to make. And now, being around you doesn't make them feel powerful anymore. It makes them feel behind. This is why some people who were loud when you were suffering are quiet now that you're winning. There are friends who cheered for the broken version of you, but feel threatened by the upgraded version. There are relatives who loved telling your struggle story, but don't know how to handle your success story. Your glow-up took away their favorite narrative about you. And here's the brutal truth. Some people didn't just want you to win. They wanted you to win a little, just not more than them. As long as you were reachable, dependent, or still visibly struggling, they were supportive. Now that you're becoming self-sufficient and harder to control, they've switched from supporting you to studying you. Not to learn, but to find something wrong with where you've arrived. Number 3, you became the mirror they can't escape from. When you started leveling up, people didn't just notice your success. They noticed themselves. They began seeing what they could have been if they had shown the same discipline, the same patience, the same focus. Your life turned into a reflection of their own choices, or lack of them. And that's uncomfortable. Nobody likes a mirror that refuses to lie, and that's exactly what you became. Every time they look at you, they're forced to confront the reality they've been avoiding, the habits they ignored, the opportunities they wasted, the excuses they repeated. They're all there, staring back at them in high definition. It's easier for most people to pretend your results were flukes, luck, or privilege than to admit that they could have achieved something similar if they had made the same hard choices. Your progress is silently judging them, and they feel it. That's why some of the attention you get feels strange. It's not admiration, it's analysis, jealousy, and comparison all mixed together. They dissect your life, trying to find shortcuts you didn't take or mistakes you might have made, hoping that if they can identify flaws in you, they can escape the uncomfortable truth your example exposes. They want to feel like you're human, like your success isn't so perfect, because if it is, then it forces them to acknowledge their own stagnation. You've become dangerous not because of what you do, but because of what your existence highlights in others. You aren't responsible for their insecurities, their unfulfilled dreams, or their excuses, but simply by being consistent, determined, and resilient, you've made them face their own reflection. And most people avoid that mirror at all costs. Being that mirror comes with quiet power. It shifts dynamics without you saying a word. People can't manipulate or diminish you without confronting the truth that you've surpassed what they believed was possible. Your life, your progress, and your discipline have become undeniable evidence of potential they ignored. You're living proof that growth doesn't wait for permission, and that reality, when seen clearly, is unavoidable. Number 4, you broke the know your place contract they never said out loud. There was an unspoken agreement around you for years. You were allowed to dream but not go too far, allowed to improve but not surpass, allowed to be promising but not powerful. You were supposed to stay in a role that made sense to everyone, the humble one, the helper, the reliable backup, the one people could low-key look down on while still calling you family or friend. You were safe as long as you stayed small. Then you ruined the script. You started moving in ways that didn't match who they decided you were. You started making decisions that didn't ask for their approval. You dared to want more without apologizing for it. You started dressing differently, talking differently, thinking differently. You outgrew gossip, laziness, broke mindsets, and emotional chaos. That's when the shift happened. The smiles got tighter. The conversations got shorter. The jokes turned sharp. Because it wasn't just that you were changing. It was that you were no longer obeying the invisible rules. You were not supposed to out-earn the people who used to feel superior to you. You were not supposed to heal from the trauma they expected to define you forever. You were not supposed to realize that this is just who I am was actually just who you were trained to be. You were meant to stay in the same circle, with the same habits, telling the same stories about struggle and limitation. Instead, you started writing a new story where you win, not just survive. That feels like betrayal to some people, even if you never wronged them. Your growth exposed that the limits were never destiny, just agreements. Agreements to stay comfortable, unchallenged, predictable. You didn't just break those agreements, you walked out of them. And now they study you. Not to clap, but to understand how you slipped out of the box they carefully placed you in. They'll call you changed, different, even fake, because they don't have the courage to admit the truth. You didn't change for the worse. You changed beyond their control. You tore through the ceiling they were still worshipping as the sky. Number 5. You are living proof that isolation can be an investment, not a sentence. When you started pulling back, people thought they had your story figured out. They whispered that you'd given up, that life had broken you, that you'd gone quiet because you couldn't keep up. You stopped showing up to every hangout. You weren't always in the group chat. You weren't available for every call or every crisis. To them, it looked like a fall-off. To you, it was a pullback. They saw distance. You knew it was construction. You chose silence over noise, depth over distraction. While they were chasing validation, scrolling for hours, and filling every empty moment with entertainment, you were sitting alone with your thoughts, your pain, your plans. You faced your patterns without running. You studied your flaws without sugarcoating them. You worked on your craft when nobody was clapping and fixed parts of yourself no one ever apologized for breaking. That wasn't punishment. That was investment. The truth is, most people are terrified of being alone with themselves, so they label solitude as sadness or failure. That's why they needed your isolation to mean you were losing. It made them feel better about staying busy, but not productive, surrounded but still empty. But now, your life is exposing the difference. You didn't disappear and die. You disappeared and developed. You didn't go missing, you went private. Now you're back in spaces you outgrew, and it's obvious something changed. Your energy is heavier in the best way. You speak with more clarity. You move with more intention. You don't react like you used to. What drains others doesn't move you the same. You're calmer, sharper, more focused. Things that once triggered you now bore you. That's what time alone gave you. Self-respect, vision, stability, and results. Your progress is forcing people to rethink what missing out really means. While they were afraid of being alone, you used solitude to build something solid. Skills, peace, strategy, a new identity. You turned what looked like isolation into incubation. Now every result you have is proof that sometimes the most powerful seasons of your life will be the ones no one gets to witness until it's too late for them to deny what it produced. Number 6, you mastered what most people avoid: emotional self-responsibility. For years, it would have been easier to blame someone else. The parents who didn't guide you, the ex who broke you, the friends who let you down, the environment that seemed stacked against you. Most people build their identity around these failures and injustices, wearing their pain like a badge of honor. It's comforting, it's familiar, it excuses inaction, but you didn't stay there. You looked at every wound, every betrayal, every setback, and decided not to let them dictate your story. You processed the pain without marrying it. You felt the hurt, acknowledged it, learned from it, and then let it go. You stopped being loyal to suffering. You refused to carry the weight of old grudges, regrets, or mistakes as your identity. Instead, you became loyal to your future, to the version of yourself that's disciplined, focused, and unbothered by what could have held you back. That shift terrifies people who are still trapped in their excuses. They have built comfort around their wounds and tell themselves, consciously or unconsciously, that they can't move forward because of what happened to them. When they see you moving, thriving, and creating results without needing apologies or external validation, it disrupts their narrative. Your life quietly shouts the truth. You don't need someone else to fix you. You only need yourself. They study you because they want the shortcut. They hope they can mimic your results without doing the inner work you did. They want to copy your success without taking responsibility for their own emotions, without facing their own pain, without abandoning the comfort of their excuses. You didn't just succeed externally, you rewired yourself internally. And that internal mastery is something they can't replicate through imitation, admiration, or observation alone. You're living proof that the hardest, loneliest work is emotional. You're proof that taking responsibility for your feelings and refusing to let your past own you is more powerful than any strategy, network, or resource. That's why they watch. Not because you're perfect, but because you refuse to stay broken. And that refusal unsettles everyone still negotiating with their own weaknesses. Number 7, you made peace with being misunderstood, and that made you unstoppable. There was a time when every raised eyebrow bothered you. If someone got you wrong, you felt this heavy urge to fix it. You would explain your side, re-explain it, send long messages, overshare, and bend yourself into knots just so people wouldn't think badly of you. Being liked felt like survival. Disapproval felt like danger. So you made yourself small, soft, and endlessly available to everyone's opinion. But slowly, reality taught you a harsh truth. No matter how much you explain, people will still hear you through the filter of their own insecurities, jealousy, and assumptions. Some people need you to be the villain, the fool, the confused one, or the trying but not quite there character in their story. It helps them feel better about themselves. You realized you were burning energy trying to fix a story that lives entirely in someone else's head. That was the turning point. You stopped chasing clarity in places where there was never goodwill. You stopped needing everyone to get you. You accepted that some people will always misread your silence, mislabel your growth, and misunderstand your distance. You got comfortable with being the bad guy in stories you never agreed to be part of. Instead of fighting for image, you started fighting for alignment. Instead of defending your name, you started defending your peace. Now you move differently. You speak less and do more. You don't rush to correct rumors. You don't run after people to prove you're genuine. You let time, consistency, and results do the explaining. You'd rather be accurate than liked, focused than popular, aligned than approved. You learned that people-pleasing is just another form of fear, and you opted out. This level of detachment confuses those who are addicted to validation. They can't understand how you're still moving, still building, still winning without their applause, permission, or praise. They watch you like a puzzle, wondering how someone can take hits, be misunderstood, get gossiped about, and still move forward like nothing happened. What they don't realize is this: the moment you stopped needing to be understood by everyone, you stopped being controlled by anyone. And that's exactly when you became unstoppable. Number 8, you stopped performing humility and started practicing reality. For a long time, you were careful about how much of yourself you revealed. You downplayed victories, muted your achievements, and whispered your ambitions because it was easier for others to digest. You pretended to be the same person you were years ago, even when growth had clearly reshaped you. You shrank your vision so it wouldn't make people uncomfortable, softening your language, hiding your plans, and apologizing for wanting more. That was not humility. It was fear dressed up as politeness. At some point, you realized that performing humility only served other people's comfort, not your progress. It kept you contained in a box they could understand, measured, and control. The world expects greatness to always come wrapped in self-doubt, uncertainty, or the "I'm not really that good" act. And when someone steps outside that mold, it unsettles them. People prefer quiet mediocrity over loud, unapologetic competence because it's easier to relate to, easier to feel superior over, easier to digest. You chose differently. You started speaking accurately about your life, your accomplishments, and your vision. You didn't inflate or boast unnecessarily, but you stopped hiding either. You embraced the truth of your own journey, where you started, what you've overcome, and how far you're willing to go. You stopped softening your reality to protect other people's egos. You learned that being honest about your progress is not arrogance, it's ownership. That shift makes people uncomfortable because they are used to greatness being wrapped in apologies, small talk, or constant self-deprecation. You refuse to dilute yourself to make others feel at ease. You refuse to be contained. You refuse to lie about how capable, disciplined, and determined you've become. Choosing accuracy over modesty isn't about seeking validation. It's about refusing to dim your light so someone else can stay comfortable. And in doing so, you've moved from performing humility to practicing reality. And that makes you quietly, unshakably formidable. Number 9. You quietly broke generational programming without needing anyone's permission. You didn't schedule a family meeting. You didn't make a long post announcing a new era. You didn't argue with every elder or try to convince everyone to see life the way you do. You just started moving differently. While others were repeating the same cycles with new faces and new excuses, you paused, looked at the patterns, and made a decision. This ends with me. You saw how certain normal behaviors were not normal at all. They were just familiar. The constant shouting, the emotional blackmail, the cheating everyone laughed off, the poverty mindset disguised as humility, the silence around abuse, the way love was expressed through control, fear, or manipulation, the way people would rather protect the family image than the family members. You realized you were raised inside a script that nobody ever questioned, and you chose not to pass that script down. Instead of blindly copying what you saw, you began to ask hard questions. Why do we treat each other like this? Why is suffering romanticized? Why is emotional neglect brushed off as, "that's just how they are"? Why is rest seen as laziness, but overworking yourself to death is praised? Those questions were your scissors. With every answer that didn't make sense, you cut another thread, tying you to the old way. You chose healing over repeating. You went to therapy or learned how to self-reflect. You started setting boundaries, even when people called you disrespectful. You stopped entertaining drama just because we're family. You allowed yourself to feel and express emotions that were always suppressed. You learned to apologize, to listen, to communicate without attacking. You started building a life where peace wasn't a visitor. It was the standard. You also chose progress over culture when they clashed. Not all culture, but the parts that demanded your mental health as a sacrifice. You refused to worship traditions that kept everyone stuck, bitter or broken. You honored your roots without letting them chain you. You showed with your life that this is how we've always done it is not a good enough reason to keep suffering the way previous generations did. That's why you're being studied now. You didn't just change your clothes or your location. You changed your programming. You walked away from inherited chaos and built something healthier without waiting for anyone to clap or agree. You quietly became the proof that generational curses can be interrupted, not by loud rebellion, but by consistent, intentional choices that say, it ran in my family until it ran into me. Number 10, you made discipline your default, not your phase. A lot of people only get serious when life slaps them. They're disciplined when they're scared, when they're heartbroken, when they're broke, when something shocks them into focus. Then, as soon as the pain cools down and things feel a little better, they drift right back into comfort. For them, discipline is a reaction. For you, it became a lifestyle. You stopped treating consistency like a temporary punishment and turned it into who you are. You made showing up a non-negotiable, not a mood. You worked when it was boring, not just when it was exciting. You stayed locked in when nobody was cheering you on. You kept going when there was no audience, no applause, no validation, no proof yet that what you were doing would work. You built your life on habits, not hype. People see your current results and label them sudden blessings, overnight success, or out of nowhere. They conveniently skip the part where you were grinding in silence, turning ordinary days into stepping stones. They don't see the nights you worked instead of scrolling, the early mornings you pushed yourself when you could have slept in, the days you repeated the same routines that looked unimpressive on the outside but were building something solid on the inside. Most people crave variety. You chose repetition. They chase dopamine. You chase progress. They want motivation. You built systems. That's the difference. You weren't relying on feeling inspired every day. You accepted that some days you'd feel nothing and still had to move. Discipline took over where motivation faded. That's why people study you like an experiment. They're trying to figure out how you keep going without burning out, how you stay consistent without constant external pressure. They want the outcome, more money, more peace, better health, sharper skills, but they're terrified of your process because your process exposes their inconsistency. Your life is a quiet reminder that most impossible things are just things people weren't willing to work toward long enough. You made discipline your default setting. You turned steady effort into your personality. And now your results are loud proof that boring, repeated actions can build a life that looks anything but boring. Number 11, you stopped waiting for closure and created your own endings. For most people, life feels unfinished until they get the apology, the explanation, the validation they believe they deserve. They replay conversations, revisit old wounds, and negotiate with memories that have no answers. They hold on to open loops, hoping someone else will fix what went wrong. But you stopped waiting. You realized that closure isn't something people hand out. It's something you build yourself. You didn't get all the apologies or reassurances you thought you needed, And instead of letting that keep you stuck, you created your own endings. You closed doors that were only half open, even if your heart wanted to linger. You forgave quietly, without fanfare, without needing anyone to acknowledge it. You blocked access without drama, cut ties without justification, and moved forward with a clarity that most people can't fathom. That kind of self-closure is rare. Many people negotiate with the past endlessly, letting old experiences dictate new choices. They carry resentment like luggage and expect it to vanish when someone else admits fault. You rejected that dynamic. You chose freedom over recognition, peace over argument, and moving on over waiting for someone else's permission to heal. Because of this, people are studying you. They notice how you navigate life without asking anyone to validate your decisions or repair your history. They watch in disbelief as you progress while others remain emotionally stuck. You've shown that you can honor the past without letting it control your present, and that's a lesson most people never fully learn. Your ability to end cycles on your own terms proves a powerful truth. The most important permission to move on comes from within. You didn't wait for approval, acknowledgement, or closure. You created it for yourself. And that independence, that quiet self-sovereignty, is what makes you both unstoppable and impossible to fully understand. Number 12, you became dangerous the moment you realized you're not replaceable in your own life. There was a time when you treated yourself like a side character in your own story. You showed up for everyone else first and for yourself last. You said yes when you were exhausted, available when you were drained, present for their crises while neglecting your own needs. You poured and poured until there was almost nothing left in you, then blamed yourself for feeling empty. Deep down, you believed that being needed was the same as being valued, and that being chosen by others mattered more than choosing yourself. Then, something in you snapped, but in a good way. You woke up to a simple, uncomfortable truth. You are the only person who has to live inside your body, your mind, and your life every single day. Everyone else can leave. Everyone else can change their mind. Everyone else can get tired of you, outgrow you, or walk away. But you're here to stay. And once that clicked, you stopped treating yourself like an optional extra. You stopped begging to be chosen. You stopped auditioning for love, friendship, and acceptance. You stopped trying to prove your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you flipped the script. You started asking, do they deserve access to me? Do they pour back into me? Do they respect my time, my energy, my boundaries? You began choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a sane way. That's when you became dangerous. Because now, people who were once comfortable taking you for granted don't know where they stand anymore. The version of you who tolerated disrespect, mixed signals, laziness, and half-love is gone. You enforce boundaries they never thought you'd have the courage to set. You say no without writing a 3-paragraph explanation. You walk away from what drains you, even if you still care. You're no longer fueled by panic at the thought of losing people. You're fueled by the fear of losing yourself again. Your self-respect is the part they can't decode. They don't understand how you can care deeply and still choose distance, how you can love them and still not tolerate their patterns, how you can miss people and still not go back. To them, it looks cold. To you, it's survival. You finally grasp that you're not replaceable in your own life, and that realization turned you into someone who is no longer easy to use, access, or manipulate. Number 13, you turned your cringe phase into a launchpad. Every awkward attempt, every failed project, every time people rolled their eyes at you or laughed at your ideas, they were all part of your education, not your shame. While others were busy curating perfection, deleting mistakes, and pretending nothing ever went wrong, you treated every cringe moment as a stepping stone. You didn't erase them from your story. You studied them, learned from them, and used them as reference points for growth. You accepted that looking foolish is part of learning. That embarrassment is the cost of progress. That the moments people whispered about are exactly the moments that sharpened your skill, thickened your skin, and strengthened your vision. Most people are too focused on image to take the risks necessary for transformation. They obsess over appearing competent, polished, and flawless, and in doing so, they stay stuck in potential forever. You didn't stay stuck. You risked being laughed at, misunderstood, and misjudged repeatedly. You kept trying even when nobody got it, even when the room went silent, even when your own confidence wavered. You knew that progress was messy, loud, and uncomfortable, and that perfection is a lie invented to hold people back. You moved through discomfort instead of around it. That willingness to be seen trying, without an instant reward or recognition, separated you from everyone still stuck in fear. That's why people are studying you now. They watch you, dissecting your moves, looking for the magic shortcut you clearly didn't take. They don't realize that the cringe they mocked is the exact fuel that built your results. You passed them because you refused to let fear dictate your timeline. Your failures, your awkward experiments, your misunderstood attempts, they aren't scars, they're launchpads. And the people who can't handle that truth will keep studying you, trying to decode the courage and persistence they were never willing to show. You went through the cringe, and now the cringe works for you instead of against you. Number 14, you proved that the real flex isn't what you have, it's what no longer controls you. Money, status, attention, they're all visible markers, and people love pointing to them because they're easy to measure. But those things are only part of the story. The real power lies in the invisible shifts, the changes no one can buy, copy, or force. It's in the way you respond to life now, how you move through the world without letting your past fears dictate your every step. Anxiety that once dictated your choices no longer runs the show. Rejection that once shattered your confidence now barely rattles you. Abandonment, betrayal, and disappointment may still sting, but they don't paralyze you anymore. You feel fear, doubt, and insecurity like everyone else, but they no longer steer your decisions or define your worth. That level of inner sovereignty is rare, and it's what people are actually noticing, even if they blame it on a new car, a bigger paycheck, or a visible lifestyle upgrade. They can imitate your wardrobe, your Instagram posts, your house, or your routines, but they cannot replicate the calm, unshakable core that allows you to live free from dependency on external validation. That peace is magnetic. It makes people watch, analyze, and study you because it's unsettling to see someone so present, so grounded, so untouchable from the inside out. They don't realize that your success isn't just what you've achieved. They're sensing the freedom you've earned by refusing to be controlled by fear, opinion, or circumstance. That is the true flex, not the applause, not the visible rewards, not the envy of others. It's the fact that your mind, your emotions, and your choices are no longer hijacked by the things that once dictated your life. You are free, unshakable, and unstoppable in ways most people will never understand. That quiet dominance, that mastery over self, is what keeps them watching, always trying to figure out what makes you untouchable. In the end, what we've explored is more than just success or achievement. It's the evolution of a human being who refused to be ordinary, who refused to be contained, and who refused to let the past dictate the future. You didn't just arrive, you became a case study, a mirror, and a challenge to everyone who ever tried to measure your potential by their comfort zone. Every choice you made, every risk you took, every uncomfortable moment you endured, has accumulated into a life that cannot be ignored, misunderstood, or dismissed. You've shown the power of self-responsibility, the courage of walking away without waiting for permission, and the clarity that comes from turning silence, isolation, and misunderstood moments into engines of growth. You transformed what most people fear, the cringe, the failure, the discomfort, into stepping stones, and in doing so you created a life that not only proves your worth, but also exposes the gaps in the lives of those who still cling to excuses. You made discipline a lifestyle, turned emotional self-mastery into a shield, and converted internal freedom into a force that no one can copy. What's truly remarkable is that all of this wasn't about seeking attention, approval, or validation. It was about becoming undeniable in your own right. You moved beyond the scripts, the expectations, and the limitations that others tried to place on you. You became the chosen one in a world that studies success like a puzzle, but rarely understands the quiet, relentless work behind it. Your story is proof that greatness is not flashy. It's consistent, resilient, and unapologetically real. So if this journey resonated with you, if you see yourself in these lessons, or if you just want to witness more insights into mastering your own life and breaking through invisible ceilings, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Like this video to support the channel, comment below with your thoughts and your own experiences, and share this with someone who needs to see what's possible when you refuse to stay small. This isn't just content. It's a blueprint, a wake-up call, and a celebration of becoming unstoppable. Stay sharp, stay focused, and keep evolving, because the world is always watching, and now you know exactly why. Stay blessed, always.